Hey there, drowsy historian here. Tonight, you're not a dissident, you're not a spy. You didn't plot against the state or whisper anything treasonous. You might have made a joke, or owned a typewriter, or existed too loudly in the wrong village. Doesn't matter. You've been marked, and now you're on a one-way trip to the coldest, hungriest, most bureaucratically indifferent place on Earth. A Soviet labor camp. You don't know it yet, but the next 10 years of your life are going to be spent digging frozen dirt with a broken shovel, rationing moldy bread with murderers, and slowly forgetting what your own name meant. So before the frostbite sets in, and your last potato hallucination wears off, leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from, and what time it is. If you'd like early access to more long, slow descents into historical misery, as well as other perks such as ad-free audio of the episodes, you'll find a link to the Patreon in the description. Now lie back, breathe slowly, and don't say anything suspicious. You never know who's listening. You're not special. You're not dangerous. You're not plotting anything. You are in fact deeply ordinary. A school teacher with a taste for dull poetry. A clerk who files things alphabetically, even when no one's watching. A mother who once complained about bread lines, too quietly for anyone to hear. Or so you thought. It's 1937, and you live in the Soviet Union, a place where safety is an illusion, and privacy is a joke told by corpses. You go to sleep each night, hoping no one noticed you today. You wake up each morning surprised they didn't. The day starts like any other. Maybe it's Tuesday, maybe it's raining. You put on your threadbare coat, sip bitter tea from a cracked mug, and head to work. Along the way, you pass a neighbor. He doesn't wave. He stopped waving. Everyone has. You clock in, you pretend to care. You nod in meetings and laugh at the right jokes and keep your eyes low. That used to be enough. But not anymore. Not today. Because tonight someone knocks on your door. Or maybe they don't. Sometimes the secret police prefer surprise. They come in 2s or 3s all in grey. No shouting, no ceremony. Just a name on a list and a practiced indifference to your protests. If you're lucky, they'll give you 10 minutes to gather your things. If you're not, you'll be pulled from bed in your night clothes and dragged down the stairs while your neighbors pretend not to hear. The building goes silent, as if it can hold its breath. You're not the first they've watched disappear. You won't be the last. You ask what this is about, though you already know the answer. It's about Article 58. It always is. The infamous clause, anti-Soviet agitation, counter-revolutionary activity, suspicion of treason. Vague on purpose, elastic by design. You once corrected someone at work who misquoted Marx. Or you didn't smile during a speech. Or you were just born to the wrong parents. The state doesn't need a reason, only the appearance of one. Guilt is assumed, innocence is unhelpful. And silence, that's practically a confession. They take you to a basement, or a police van, or a prison cell that smells like mildew and fear. There's a flickering light, and a metal desk, and a man who has done this hundreds of times. He doesn't care who you are, he doesn't need to. He slides a form across the table, and tells you to sign. You ask what it is. He says it's your confession. You laugh. That was a mistake. He doesn't. The interrogation starts politely. It ends somewhere between exhaustion and hallucination. They ask you questions with no right answers. Why did you write to your cousin in Poland? You didn't. Why did you hesitate before answering? Because you were trying to remember if you had a cousin in Poland. So you admit it. But that was the wrong answer too. You are kept awake for days. Or maybe it's weeks. You lose track. The lights never turn off. The shouting never stops. The thoughts become soup. And eventually, you say what they want to hear. Not because it's true, but because your brain is bleeding fatigue. And you'll say anything, just to sleep. If you have family, they've already been questioned, maybe arrested. Your spouse is guilty by proximity. Your children are now the children of an enemy of the state. Sometimes they're adopted out. Sometimes they're left in the street. Depends on the mood of the bureaucracy that day. You'll never see them again. Or if you do, they won't recognize you. You won't recognize yourself either. Eventually they stop asking questions. Or rather, they grow tired of pretending they're questions. You're not told what's next, just that your case is moving forward. You are not released. You are not tried. You are placed on a shelf, like expired milk, until the system decides what to do with you. Weeks pass, or is it months? Time blurs in a windowless cell, lit by a single flickering bulb. You hear whispers of others disappearing. Some reappear, vacant and grey, most don't. Then one morning, or maybe night, it's hard to tell, you're pulled from your cell and told you'll be appearing before a tribunal. That sounds official, important. It isn't. You don't know it yet, but this is the moment your life is stamped, filed, and quietly discarded. The sentence is already written. All that's left is to watch someone read it aloud, like they're announcing the weather. You aren't given a lawyer. That would imply someone believed you had rights. You aren't shown any evidence, because there isn't any. Just the confession you finally signed in a moment of desperation, or sleep deprivation, or after a few cracked ribs. It's hard to remember which came first. You didn't even read what it said. You just wanted the shouting to stop. They told you things would be easier if you signed. They said your family wouldn't suffer, that your children might be spared. You knew they were lying, but you signed anyway. What else was left to do? You're shuffled into a room that vaguely resembles a courtroom, if you squint hard enough and lower your standards to match the regime's. 3 men in uniform sit behind a desk. Their faces are unreadable, but not because they're men of depth. They're unreadable because they've done this so many times that their expressions are fossilized into a kind of professional disinterest. One picks his teeth with a pencil. Another is already stamping documents before the proceedings begin. They don't ask how you plead. They don't ask if you understand the charges. They ask if you have any last remarks, which is a strange thing to hear before you've even been sentenced. You try to speak. You start to explain that there must be a mistake, that you've been loyal, that you've always obeyed the party, loved the country, kept your head down, and your voice low. One of them sighs. Another flips to the next page in your file. The third asks you if you think the state arrests people for no reason. You hesitate, unsure if this is a rhetorical question or a trap. It is both. There is no jury, no defense, no deliberation. The entire process lasts less than 10 minutes. They glance at your confession and nod. You've confessed to crimes against the state, against socialism, against the people. That's enough, more than enough. In fact, why are you still talking? The sentence is read without ceremony. 10 years in corrective labor. You're lucky, they say. Some people get the bullet, but you get a train ticket. It's cheaper that way. Bullets cost money. Trains and shovels are reusable. The guards return and pull you to your feet. You're not shackled, yet. There's no need. You're not going anywhere. Your legs barely work and your sense of reality has been steadily eroding since your arrest. The walls feel too close. The ceiling feels too low. The world seems like it's underwater, muffled and slow. You're led down a hallway, lined with doors that probably hide more frightened people on benches, clinging to the hope that someone will realize this is all a mistake. But no one does. There are no mistakes in the Soviet system. Only traitors, and those who haven't confessed yet. Back in your cell, the news spreads quickly. 10 years, a round number. Some people nod sympathetically. Others smirk and mutter that they expected worse. You sit down, trying to process it. 10 years? You imagine what your life will look like at the end of it. But then you remember, this isn't 10 years with good behavior. This isn't a prison with books and visitors and parole hearings. This is 10 years in a place designed to grind you into something that might resemble gravel. If you make it out at all, it won't be as the person you were. It might not even be as a person. Later that night, a cellmate offers congratulations. 10 is light, he says. You must be someone important. You tell him you're a school teacher. He shrugs. Bad profession. You agree. He doesn't ask what you did. No one ever does. Everyone in here is innocent or claims to be or stopped caring 2 weeks ago. Guilt is abstract. Survival is the only thing that matters now. You wonder briefly whether your sentence was decided before the trial even started. Whether the men in that room knew anything about you besides what was scribbled on the top of a file. Whether they even read the file. You think about the stack of papers on their desk, the conveyor belt of confessions, the rubber stamps like factory tools. You realize they probably didn't care what you said. They just needed to move the day along. Like clerks processing packages, they slap on a label. 10 years, labor camp, next, and toss you into the system. The night before transport, you lie awake on the hard bench that passes for a bed. Your limbs ache, your teeth throb. Your stomach hasn't felt full since the day before your arrest. Outside the cell window, if you're lucky enough to have one, the sky looks like ash. The silence feels too loud. You think of your home, your bed, your children's voices. You think of the life you had, and the life you've been assigned. You wonder if there's a difference. You try not to cry, because weakness is a luxury no one can afford here. And besides, it won't change anything. The train is coming either way. They come for you before dawn, always before dawn. You're shaken awake by boots and orders, barked in a rhythm that suggests they've done this too many times to count. You're handed back your coat, thinner now somehow, and the bag of belongings you're allowed to keep, which is mostly empty. You're marched down a hallway, past other prisoners who keep their eyes low, pretending not to see you. That's the etiquette here. You don't look at those departing because you might be next, and no one wants their last memory to be a reflection of their own future. Convoy is already waiting, a line of train cars squatting on a track, like metal coffins with wheels. They're not passenger cars, or even freight cars. These are boxcars, windowless, welded shut from the outside, with rust creeping like frost over the steel. You're herded inside with dozens of others, 60, 70, maybe more. No one counts. There isn't space. You're packed in so tight that turning around requires group cooperation. It's not a train. It's a can of humans, a mobile oubliette. The door slams shut behind you with a finality that makes your spine ache. The only light comes from a hole in the ceiling, no larger than a fist. It's too high to reach, too small to see much. A little air trickles through, not enough. The stench hits almost immediately. Old sweat, unwashed skin, panic. Someone near you is already shaking. Someone else is crying quietly. No one speaks above a whisper. The floor is just wooden planks slick with frost, and very quickly, other things. There's no toilet. Just a metal bucket in the corner, which fills up fast and spills even faster. Eventually, no one even tries to aim. There's nowhere clean to step. You learn to stand still and hope for dry spots, which don't exist. The train jerks forward without warning, throwing everyone off balance. There are no windows, no stations, no announcements. You have no idea where you're going, how long it will take, or even which direction you're headed. Days pass, though the concept of day becomes vague. There's no sun, only the dim rhythm of stops and starts, interrupted by the occasional scream when someone tries to claw at the door. You sleep sitting up, crushed between strangers. Sometimes you nod off, and your head rolls onto a shoulder that may or may not be friendly. Sometimes you wake up soaked in your own sweat, or someone else's. You're not given food, or if you are, it's once a day, a ladle of watery soup passed through the hatch. If you're lucky, a crust of bread. There's never enough. The strong push forward. The weak don't bother. Hunger grows sharp after the second day, then dull, then sharp again. You think about eating anything. A button, a shoelace. You dream of potatoes like they're lovers. You smell things that aren't there. Apples, garlic, roasted meat. Phantoms of a life that is now completely imaginary. One man chews the corner of his coat until his teeth bleed. You envy him. At least he still has teeth. Time stretches into something grotesque. People stop talking. Some begin muttering to themselves. Others grow alarmingly still. On the 5th day, or maybe the 9th, who knows, someone dies. There's no ceremony. The body is laid in the corner and stepped over like a sack of potatoes. No one says anything. No one dares. You're all just grateful it wasn't you. Yet, later, someone urinates on the body by accident. Or maybe not by accident. Doesn't matter. He doesn't complain. You stop recognizing your own limbs. Your feet are numb, your hands swollen. Your skin is slick with grime. You haven't changed position in hours, but your spine feels like it's folded in half. Your breath fogs the air, which stinks of ammonia, vomit, and the uniquely sour scent of despair. Occasionally, the train stops and the doors open briefly. You're blinded by the daylight. A few bodies are pulled out. Dead or too close to dead to be worth the effort. If you're let out to relieve yourself, it's on the side of the tracks under armed watch. You barely notice the guards anymore. The gun is just part of the scenery. By the 2nd week, or what might be the 2nd week, you stop trying to calculate time. Time is a luxury, and you're not luxurious. The train rolls on through landscapes you can't see. Forests, snowfields, towns you'll never visit. Every now and then, you hear voices outside. Sometimes music. The real world, still spinning. You're not part of it anymore. You exist inside a metal box that doesn't even pretend to care if you survive the journey. If anyone tries to talk about where you're going, the conversation dies fast. It's too painful, too abstract. There are rumors, mines, forests, tundra, places with names that sound like sneezes. But the details don't matter. All you know is that wherever you're headed, it won't be better than this. Just colder, harder, somehow worse. One man jokes that this is the worst camping trip he's ever been on. No one laughs, but a few people smile. It's the closest thing to joy you've seen in days. And then one morning, or evening, it's hard to tell, the train groans to a final halt. The train door opens and for a second it's blinding. Not because the sun is bright, but because it exists. After days or weeks in darkness, even grey daylight feels radioactive. Your eyes sting. Your lungs rebel as freezing air slams down your throat like a punch made of glass shards. The guards shout and shove, herding you out of the cattle car with the urgency of someone unloading spoiled meat. Your legs forget how to stand. You wobble forward, joining the line of human wreckage stumbling across a crust of snow and ice that stretches as far as you can see. There is no town, no station, no welcoming committee, just a patch of Siberian wilderness, flat and endless, broken only by a few half-built structures, and the wind, which never stops screaming. This is it. Welcome to camp. Not a camp, like a place you'd send children to learn archery and make friends. The camp, your camp. A labor colony, with a name that probably includes a cheerful acronym, and the phrase corrective purpose. It looks like something a drunk architect sketched on a napkin, then burned in shame. A few barracks, already sagging. Some scaffolding. Watchtowers that appear to have been nailed together by people who'd never seen wood before. Smoke dribbles from a couple of chimneys. Not because there's warmth to be had, but because someone inside is burning boots again. It's unclear what's finished, what's starting, and what's just collapsed. But one thing's certain. This place isn't ready for humans. That's your job. You're given your first task before your name is even called. Not that it matters. Your name's been replaced with a number anyway. You are to help finish building the camp. That's right. Before you can be properly punished here, you must first help construct the facility where your punishment will occur. Efficient, isn't it? You might call it ironic. They call it policy. You're handed tools that feel like museum relics. A rusted hammer, a warped saw, maybe a crowbar, if you're lucky. Gloves? Don't be absurd. Gloves are for people with value. The ground is frozen solid, not cold, frozen. A tundra so hard it bends your shovel when you try to break it. Your first hour is spent figuring out how to dig a post hole in permafrost. Your second hour is spent failing. Your third is interrupted by someone collapsing next to you. No one reacts. That's just how first days go. The guards bark. Someone drags the body away, probably to the infirmary, though it might just be the woods. You're told to keep working. You do. Because stopping means punishment, and punishment means something worse than this. Somehow, by sunset, which comes alarmingly early, you're soaked in sweat that's already starting to freeze inside your clothes. Your boots, if you were lucky enough to receive boots, are soaked and splitting. Your hands are blistered. Your lungs feel scorched from breathing sub-zero air all day. You're not sure if your fingers are still attached. They're numb, but not in the helpful way. In the ominous, pre-frostbite way. You haven't eaten since yesterday, unless you count licking the inside of your mouth for flavor. Eventually, you're taken to the barracks. From a distance, they look like wooden huts. Up close, they look like wooden excuses. The walls are thin, the floors walked, the windows permanently open due to broken panes or bad carpentry. Inside, the temperature is barely above freezing. The warmth comes not from fire, but from crowding. Dozens of bodies packed wall to wall, sleeping head to toe on sagging bunks. There's no privacy, no quiet, just the constant sound of coughing, snoring, and the occasional groan of someone dreaming about food or home or death. Your assigned bunk smells like mildew, and something worse, something medical. There's straw in the mattress, and it moves. Lice. You were warned about them, and now here they are, greeting you like old friends. You strip off your coat, which is frozen in strange folds, and lay down, fully clothed, because to undress is to invite hypothermia. Your neighbor says nothing. He's asleep, or pretending to be. You don't blame him. There's nothing to say that hasn't already been screamed into the wind. At some point during the night, you wake to scratching. Not rodents, though they're here too, but people, scratching their scalps, their chests, their legs. A chorus of desperate friction. Lice infestations so thorough they feel structural, like part of the camp itself. One man mutters something in his sleep about washing. You almost laugh. There hasn't been soap here since the revolution. You scratch too, already resigned. It's not the worst sensation of the day. That honor belongs to your lungs. The wind never stops. It cuts through walls and clothing and bone. You lie still, blinking at the ceiling, which is just dark enough to disappear. This place isn't quiet, not really. It hums with suffering. The creak of wood under weight, the rasp of breath, the groan of men too tired to moan properly. You realize, as sleep drags you under, that you've arrived in a place that doesn't want you to die. At least not yet. It wants you to work, die later, after quotas, after winter, after your usefulness has been sucked dry. This is not the punishment. This is just the setting. The next morning begins with a whistle, or a shout, or the sound of a rifle butt slamming into the side of the barracks. Whatever it is, it drags you up from sleep like a claw. You're not rested. Your body aches from cold, from work, from lying on a mattress that may as well have been a pile of firewood and regrets. Someone kicks your foot and tells you to get moving. The first full day begins with processing. It sounds bureaucratic, it is, but not in a way that benefits you. You're herded into a building that smells like wet socks and bleach. One by one, you're shaved bald. Scalp, face, eyebrows, everything. The shears are dull, and the hands holding them are not gentle. Hair falls in clumps. No one explains anything. You look around and see a room full of strangers, becoming nearly identical. Everyone gets the same treatment. Strip away the individuality, strip away the past. The point isn't hygiene, it's erasure. Next comes the paperwork. You don't fill it out. You're not trusted with pens. You stand while someone else does it for you, muttering numbers and codes. Your name is replaced with a prisoner ID. You're now officially a Zek, a term that sounds almost affectionate, until you realize it's just short for zaklochoni, which means convict. But really, it just means disposable labor. No one looks at you. You're another file, another notch on someone's clipboard. You're not worth anger or pity, just ink. They hand you a coat, thin wool, hole near the armpit, missing a button. You get pants too, stiff, itchy, and a few sizes too large. They sag when you walk, which is a nice distraction from your rotting boots. You don't get to choose those. They're pulled from a pile and tossed at your feet like scraps. One sole is peeling away. The other squishes when you step, as if it's absorbed the despair of its previous owner. You receive a hat, but it's more symbolic than warm. You're now dressed for survival, at least by camp standards, which means not at all. Your orientation continues with a short lecture, delivered by a man who might once have had a soul, but now seems mostly composed of cigarettes and cynicism. He welcomes you to the camp, not with warmth, but with warnings. You are here to work. You are here to serve the people, which really means the quotas. You are not to disobey. You are not to steal. You are not to attempt escape. You are, most importantly, not to die, because it messes with the numbers. He doesn't smile when he says that. No one does. You're told that food rations are tied directly to labor output. Meet your quota, and you'll get your bread. Fall short, and you'll get less. Starve, and you'll get even less than that. If you're too sick to work, you're just taking up space. If you're too injured, they'll find a use for you somewhere else. You don't ask where. You don't want to know. Someone else steps forward to discuss the rules. They're arbitrary and enforced selectively. Talking back, stepping out of line, even looking the wrong direction. Any of it could mean the punishment cell. Or worse, you're told the guards are not here to coddle you. They are here to maintain order. You will not like their methods. That's the point. There's no appeal process. No one cares if you are wrongly imprisoned. Everyone here says that. Everyone here thinks they're different. You're not. After orientation, you're taken to your new home, the barracks. You're led to a bed that is slightly less filthy than the others. The mattress is straw-wrapped in a moldy blanket. The bed frame is metal, rusty, and groans under your weight like it's offended by your presence. Around you are men in various stages of collapse. Some coughing blood. Some scratching bites. Some staring blankly at the ceiling, like they're trying to forget what ceilings are. One nods at you. It's not a greeting. It's a warning. Keep your head down and your mouth shut. You find out quickly that hygiene is theoretical. There are no functioning baths, no clean water unless you melt it yourself. Lice and fleas are part of daily life. If you manage to kill them, more arrive. You scratch in your sleep. You wake up bleeding. You learn to stop caring. Disease spreads through the barracks like whispers. Dysentery, pneumonia, typhus. They don't discriminate. The infirmary is a room with a cot, a bucket, and a nurse who looks exhausted enough to be a patient. Most people just tough it out. Or they don't. Later you're given a small tin bowl and a wooden spoon. These are your possessions now. Guard them with your life, because no one will give you another. If you lose your bowl, you don't eat. If someone steals it, you'll have to trade something to get it back. Boots, your coat, maybe your dignity, if there's any left. You hold it close as you lie down that night. Body wrapped in your coat, hat pulled over your eyes. Listening to the man in the bunk above you cough like he's trying to hack out his soul. No one checks on you. No one asks if you're settling in. The orientation is over. You've been processed, sorted, labeled, and filed away like a broken tool in a drawer that hasn't been opened in years. You're no longer a civilian. You're a number in a logbook, a unit of labor, a placeholder for someone more important. No one here wants to know your story. No one's going to save you. The best you can hope for is to last long enough to be useful. Welcome to the system. The morning begins before the sky even considers changing color. You're shaken awake by a guard. Outside, the wind howls like it knows your name. You dress in silence, pulling on the same frozen coat, the same damp boots, the same stiff pants that never quite dried from the day before. Your hat is crusted with frost from your own breath. Your limbs ache, not with soreness but with something deeper. Fatigue baked into your bones. No one says a word as the barracks empties. Talking wastes energy. Energy you don't have. There is no breakfast, at least, not for you. Your ration is conditional, and today is your first day. You haven't earned anything yet. Your stomach grumbles and twists, trying to digest itself for fuel. A guard points to a line forming outside the mess hall and shakes his head. After work, he mutters, if you're lucky, if you're useful. You try not to look at the pot of steaming soup being ladled out to the quota earners. It's thin, probably just cabbage water, but in this moment, it may as well be a feast. You're marched in a column, boots crunching through ice-crusted snow, breath clouding in the air, like little white flags of surrender. The trees loom in the distance, tall, ancient, indifferent. You've never chopped down a tree in your life. Most of the other men haven't either. It doesn't matter. You're a lumberjack now, congratulations. You're handed an axe that looks like it was forged during the Napoleonic Wars. The handle warped, the blade dull. No gloves, no safety gear, no instructions. A guard points at a section of forest and tells you how many trees to bring down by the end of the day. The number sounds made up. It probably is. You take your place in the line of men and lift the axe. It's heavier than it looks. The wood is harder than you thought. You swing, and the blade bounces off, like you've just tried to slice granite. Your hands rattle, your shoulders shriek. You swing again, and again. By the 5th swing, your breath is fogging in great clouds. By the 10th, your fingers are numb and blistered. You try to find a rhythm, but the cold stiffens your muscles faster than you can warm them. The axe feels like a punishment in itself. Around you, others work with grim efficiency. Not because they're strong, most are rail thin and shaking, but because they know what happens if you fall short. The quota is everything. You don't meet it, you don't eat. It's not a metaphor, it's literal. Food is assigned based on productivity, and there's no sliding scale, no bell curve. You make the number, or you go hungry. Do that too many times, and you stop being a person. You become a warning. Someone next to you collapses. He gets back up, then falls again. This time he stays down. A guard walks over, pokes him with a rifle butt, and shrugs. 2 other prisoners are ordered to carry the body back to camp. The guard makes a note on a clipboard. His quota will still count, you're told. Dead labor still counts as fulfilled labor. It's comforting, in a bleak way. At least if you die today, your contribution won't go unnoticed. By midday, though the sun is barely more than a pale suggestion, above the trees, you've brought down half a tree. Your hands are blistered and bleeding, your shoulders trembling, and your breath comes in wheezes. You look at the other Zeks, some of whom have managed 3 or 4 trees. You hate them. Not because they're better, but because they're surviving. One of them glances at your work and shakes his head. Swing from the shoulder, he mutters. You nod and try, but your arm barely lifts. You suspect your body's trying to mutiny. There's no lunch break, just brief pauses where men lean against trees and pant like animals. You try not to sit down. Sitting means you'll stiffen, and if you stiffen, you won't get back up. You force yourself to keep moving. The axe is your only tool, your only hope, and your only curse. The blade chips a little more each hour. So do you. By the time the guards call an end to the shift, your entire body feels like it's been hollowed out and filled with sawdust. You can't feel your fingers. You're not even sure you still have 10 of them. You look at your hands and see blood, calluses and grime. You can't straighten your back. Someone next to you vomits into the snow and keeps walking. No one reacts. You line up and trudge back toward the camp, dragging your feet through the same snow you marched out over this morning. Only now, the footprints are deeper, the weight heavier. Back at camp, you're allowed into the mess hall. You hand in your work tally, which is evaluated with all the compassion of a broken vending machine. The guard nods. Barely. You get your ladle of soup. It tastes like boiled despair with a hint of old turnip. You savor every bite. You know that tomorrow might be different. If your tally is short, your bowl will be too. You eat with your head down, your spoon moving quickly, mechanically. Every calorie is sacred. That night, as you crawl into your lice-ridden bunk, every joint screaming, your skin splitting in places you can't reach, you try not to think about tomorrow. Because tomorrow, you'll do it again. And again. Until you break. Or freeze. Or both. You're a lumberjack now. Not a good one. Not a trained one. Just one more in a long line of men who swing dull blades at trees they'll never live to see fall. Food in the camp is not a meal. It is not a break. It is not nourishment in the traditional sense. It is a transaction. Labor in exchange for calories, barely enough to keep you vertical, but never enough to make you whole. After your first day of work, you're handed your ration in a line that moves with the pace of the condemned. One by one, secs step up to the serving window. Bowls outstretched like beggars, which is essentially what you are now. You reach the front and receive your prize, a ladle of grey liquid that smells faintly like wet paper and boiled sadness. It drips into your tin bowl with a sound that's more metallic than appetizing. It's called soup, but that's generous. It's water mostly, sometimes cloudy, sometimes oily, always suspicious. Floating inside are a few strands of cabbage, some unidentifiable fibers that might once have been meat, and the occasional lump that defies classification entirely. You don't ask what it is. No one does. Asking implies you expect answers. Expecting anything is dangerous. You stare into the bowl and wonder whether it will stay in your stomach or come rocketing back out the moment your body realizes it's been given something foreign. Then comes the bread. If you hit your quota, you get the standard slice. If you exceeded it, which is unlikely, but not impossible, you might receive an extra chunk. A luxury so rare it's spoken about, in hushed tones like a miracle. If you fell short though, your portion shrinks accordingly. Sometimes you get half, sometimes none. The bread is dark, dense and dry enough to require chewing that borders on carpentry. It smells faintly of yeast and overwhelmingly of dust. The crust is so hard it could double as a weapon. You've seen men trade their boots for an extra piece. You've seen men fight over crumbs. You sit down at the long wooden table shoulder to shoulder with other Zecs, and you eat in silence. No one talks during meals. Talking wastes time. Talking invites someone to notice you, and being noticed is rarely good. You watch the others with your peripheral vision, gauging how quickly they're eating, whether they're guarding their bowls, whether anyone looks desperate enough to steal. You eat with your head low and your eyes open, spoon scraping the bottom of the bowl, like you're mining for flavor. When the soup is gone, you lick the rim, savoring every trace of warmth and salt. You consider licking your neighbor's bowl too, but he's already doing it himself. Occasionally, someone finds something extra in their soup. A chunk of gristle, a shred of what might be potato, a rogue beet fragment. It's cause for celebration. Or paranoia. Did they get lucky? Or did the kitchen staff dump something they weren't supposed to? Either way, no one questions it. You eat what you're given, and you're grateful it isn't moving. Once a man found a mouse tail in his soup. He didn't complain. He chewed carefully and kept going. The kitchen is staffed by other prisoners. You think this might mean they're more careful, more sympathetic. They aren't. If anything, they're worse. They steal extra rations for themselves, slip favors to friends, and water down the soup when the guards aren't looking. If someone in the kitchen doesn't like you, your ladle might come from the bottom of the pot, where the scorched bits lived, or from the top, which is mostly grease and disappointment. There's no consistency, no fairness, no mercy, just the endless ladling of lukewarm punishment. You hear rumors of other camps, places where the food is worse if you can imagine it, where bread rations are cut with sawdust to stretch supplies, where soup is made with boiled bones and little else, where starvation isn't a threat but a schedule. Men speak in quiet voices about a Zek who once ate his own belt, softened it in water, and chewed for hours just to feel full. Another supposedly caught a rat, cooked it over a stolen candle, and lived. Until the guards caught him and beat him so badly, he couldn't eat anything after that. Despite the bleakness, food becomes obsession. You dream about it constantly. Loaves of rye with butter, thick stews with meat that doesn't have a name, apples so fresh they crunch between your teeth, instead of dissolving into mush. Your stomach becomes a second brain, one that thinks in hunger and speaks in cramps. You learn to eat slowly, to make the bowl last. But some men do the opposite. They shovel it in. Like fast consumption might fill more space, it never does. There are days when the hunger sharpens your vision, when you notice crumbs on the floor and catch yourself calculating how long they've been there, how dirty the boot that stepped on them might have been. You see a crust fall from another Zek's lap, and your body surges forward before your mind catches up. You want it, you need it, but so does he. And he saw you looking. You both freeze, bowls in hand, a quiet standoff that ends with a shrug. Tomorrow's another chance. Maybe. The worst part isn't the pain. It's the knowledge that this is the good version. This is what feeding you looks like, when you're doing everything right, meeting quotas, showing up, collapsing in the snow only after the day ends. And even then, it's just enough to keep your heart ticking and your legs moving. Not enough to grow back what the cold and the work and the fear are carving away. Just enough to delay the end. And if you fall behind tomorrow, there's a simpler ration for that. The kind that comes with no bread, half a bowl, and the creeping suspicion that you won't make it to next week. But hey, at least you'll be later for the work detail. The barracks is many things. Cold, overcrowded, infested. But above all, it is a test, not of endurance or strength. Those are obvious. No, the real test is social, psychological. You are now sharing your nights and days with the full spectrum of Soviet undesirables. Some are innocent, like you. Or at least, as innocent as anyone can be here. Others are career criminals, professionals in theft, assault, extortion. The type who came in broken and arrived fully adapted. Then there are the ones you don't talk about. The ones with the stare. The ones who chew their food too slowly, like they've known more desperate forms of hunger. There's no sorting system. The Gulag doesn't care whether your crime was murder or misplacing a newspaper. All Zeks are the same on paper. Cheap labor. But inside the barracks, hierarchy thrives. At the top are the real criminals, blatny, as they're called. The thieves in law. They run the show, not the guards. They control the cigarettes, the food scraps, the black market for soap and sex and razor blades. You don't cross them. You don't borrow from them. You definitely don't sleep with your back to them. The middle rung is occupied by people like you, politicals, informers, former intellectuals with no practical value. You're tolerated, occasionally mocked, frequently ignored. You're also the most likely to be robbed in your sleep. If you're lucky, it'll just be your boots. If you're not, you'll wake up bleeding. Then there's the bottom tier, the outcasts, the ones who try to escape, the ones who talk too much, the ones who snapped. You know who they are because no one sits next to them, and their faces are puffy in ways that suggest repeated educational beatings. At first you try to stay neutral. You keep to yourself. You don't make eye contact. You nod politely, but not too politely. You answer questions but briefly. It doesn't work. Nothing works. You're new, which makes you suspicious. You're quiet, which makes you dangerous. You're breathing, which makes you a potential competitor for resources. Everyone watches everyone. Every gesture, every mutter, every long look. There are eyes in every bunk, and you can never be sure which ones belong to someone who's already sold your name to the guards for an extra crust of bread. Informants are the worst, Not because they're cruel, but because they don't need to be. They just report things, harmless things. He said the work was hard. He looked at a guard funny. He's hiding an extra pair of socks. Little details, exchanged for microscopic benefits. A warmer blanket. A gentler work assignment. The privilege of standing closer to the stove for 5 extra minutes. You never find out who they are until it's too late. Sometimes you never find out at all. You just notice people disappearing, and you start keeping your mouth shut, even tighter than before. Trust is rare. Friendship is dangerous. A kind word might earn you a companion, or a knife in the ribs. You hear stories about Zex who got too close. One shared his bread. The next night, his bowl was empty, and his bunk was full of bruises. Another gave someone a pair of socks, woke up without toes. You learn quickly that generosity is interpreted as weakness. So is kindness, so is honesty. The safest route is silence always. Occasionally, the barracks erupts. A fight over food, or blankets, or personal space that doesn't exist. The guards don't always intervene. Sometimes they watch, sometimes they bet. Other times, they punish both men, regardless of who started it. It's all the same to them. Zex are replaceable. You hear bones break, see teeth land in the dirt, smell the coppery stink of blood. And the next day, both men are swinging axes side by side in the woods, like nothing happened. Apologies are optional. Memory is optional too, if you're concussed hard enough. Then there are the stories that don't get told in daylight. Stories about what happens in the outer camps. The smaller ones. Places where the guards leave the prisoners alone too long. Where hunger eats the last slivers of morality. Stories of Zex who disappear, not because they escape, but because they're eaten. You think it's a joke, until you hear it twice. Then 3 times. Then from a man who stares just a little too long at your hands while you eat. You keep telling yourself it's myth, wartime exaggeration, but you never sleep without clutching your spoon like a weapon. You adjust in your own way. You sleep facing the door. You wedge your boots into the wall so no one can steal them. You learn to hide your ration under your coat and eat it slowly, like it's a secret. You learn to fake sleep while listening, to recognize footsteps, to read body language, like a survival manual. The man above you coughs differently when he's hiding something. The man below you hums before he lashes out. You build a 6th sense or you die. Still, there are moments, brief and strange, when someone nods at you without menace. A fellow Zek tosses you a scrap of bread when he thinks you're not eating. Someone shares a story, low and quick, about life before the camps. You don't respond, but you remember. These are not friendships. These are acts of human inertia, fading signals that not everyone here has given up completely. But you don't trust them. You can't. That's how people disappear. Because in the barracks, survival means isolation. And isolation means safety, or at least the illusion of it. And in this place, illusion is often the only comfort left. You don't notice your health failing all at once. It happens in increments. Small indignities that stack like cordwood until your body feels like it's turning against you. It starts with the cold. Always the cold. Your fingers stop responding properly, and your toes lose all sensation. You tell yourself it's temporary, just a bit of numbness. But then you take off your boots and notice the skin has turned grey, then black around the edges. It peels when you touch it. You put the boot back on and pretend you didn't see anything. It's easier that way. Then come the teeth. You try to chew your bread, and something crunches that isn't the crust. It's a molar, cracked in half, from weeks of gnawing through sawdust and grit. The pain is dull at first, then sharp, then omnipresent. You try to ignore it, because the last thing you want is to visit the infirmary. You've seen what passes for dental care here. A woman with iron pliers, and the bedside manner of a pit boss. Her anesthetic is vodka if you're lucky, a leather strap if you're not. You don't want to be anywhere near her tools. So you stop chewing that side, you mash your food with your tongue, Eventually, the tooth falls out on its own. Problem solved if you squint hard enough. The lice are permanent residents. They live in your seams, your waistband, your collar. You scratch so often it becomes background noise, like breathing. You stop caring about modesty or dignity. You strip in front of strangers and hold your shirt to the fire, trying to kill the vermin by cooking them. You slap your own arms mid-conversation. You wake up bleeding from places you can't reach. At first it's disgusting. Later, it's just routine. Everyone has lice, everyone scratches. The only ones who don't are either new or dead. Bathing is a seasonal luxury. In summer, you might get taken to the river once a month. You wash quickly, looking over your shoulder the entire time, because some of the men don't just steal boots. In winter, there's no point. Water freezes on your skin before you can rinse. Soap is non-existent. The best you can hope for is melting a handful of snow and rubbing it on your face like an apology. You smell like everyone else. Sweat, rot, mold. The stench clings to your coat and to your skin, and eventually to your identity. You are not a person anymore. You are a smell with legs. You will get sick. It's not a possibility. It's a calendar event. A sore throat becomes a cough, which becomes a wheeze, which becomes something that rattles your chest like loose change. Your nose drips constantly, and you carry around a rag that quickly stiffens into a brick. Your joints ache. Your head spins. But you keep moving, because if you stop, you're told you're malingering. If you admit to being sick, you might get a rest day. More likely, you'll be punished for wasting state resources. The infirmary, if you insist on visiting it, is a single room that smells like iodine, sweat, and resignation. The nurse is another prisoner, a woman who used to be a school teacher, or a pharmacist, or something else irrelevant now. She is a bottle of rubbing alcohol, a pair of scissors, and an expression that tells you not to expect much. There are no antibiotics, no bandages that haven't already been used. You get a strip of torn fabric and a splash of vodka over the wound. If you're bleeding, she might sew you up. If you have a fever, she'll tell you to drink water and sleep. Then she'll send you back to work. It doesn't matter what's wrong with you. You could have a fever of 104, or a gangrenous foot, or a cracked rib. You still go to the forest, or the mines, or the rail line. You still swing the axe. You still dig the trench. If you can move, you work. If you can't, you lie in your bunk until someone decides you're either faking or finished. There is no in-between. No sick leave, no recovery period. The body is not a temple here. It is a tool. And when it breaks, it gets tossed aside like any other. Sometimes someone disappears into the infirmary and never comes back. You assume they died, but no one confirms it. Their bunk is filled by someone new. Their clothes are divided up. Their bowl is claimed. Grief is not expressed here. It's not even permitted. You are expected to adapt, to accept, to continue. If the man beside you loses a leg, you help him up for a few days. Then you stop, because the guard will ask why you're slowing down, and you can't afford that. Your body becomes something you resent. It betrays you, with every cough, every blister, every infected cut that won't heal. You wish it would toughen up, keep pace, stop needing things like rest and warmth and calories, but it won't. It will decay, and you'll keep dragging it forward, because there's no other choice. You don't heal in the Gulag. You persist until you don't. And when someone's body finally gives up, when it refuses to move or stand or breathe in the rhythm that work requires, they are not mourned. They are noted. A line on a chart, a number adjusted, a mouth no longer fed. Someone else takes their spot, picks up their axe and swings. The system keeps running. It always does. You try not to think about whether that someone will be you. You might expect the guards to be the worst part of camp life, and you wouldn't be entirely wrong, but you wouldn't be entirely right, either. The guards aren't a monolith. Some are brutal, others are bureaucratic, a few are even forgettable. But every one of them, regardless of temperament, holds your fate in their gloved hands. Some enforce rules because they believe in them. Some do it because they enjoy it. Others are just passing the time, like prison wardens on autopilot. But the one thing they all share is power. And in the Gulag, power doesn't come with accountability. It comes with a club. Their job, officially, is to maintain order and maximize labor output. Unofficially, is to make sure you're always one mistake away from punishment. You never know what might trigger it. Maybe you didn't stand up fast enough during roll call. Maybe you paused to cough on the work site. Maybe a guard was just in a bad mood and didn't like the way your face looked when you were swinging the axe. You learn quickly that guilt is irrelevant. What matters is perception, and timing, and luck. The punishments are varied, and some seem to exist solely to keep the guards entertained. You might be made to stand barefoot in the snow for hours, your toes slowly going numb, or the wind flays your skin, like a second coat being torn off. You might be thrown into the kartzer, the punishment cell, a hole in the ground the size of a coffin, dug into the permafrost, and sealed with a wooden hatch. There's no light, no heat, and just enough air to keep you conscious. If you're lucky, they forget about you after a day. If you're not, it's 3. Some punishments are less formal. A rifle butt to the ribs, a boot to the head, a slap across the face hard enough to leave you seeing stars. There's no paperwork, no explanation, just a quick flash of violence, delivered with the kind of casual ease that comes from practice. You don't cry out. That's important. If you scream or beg, it becomes a game. They want to see how far they can push you before something breaks. If you hold still, they get bored, usually. There are guards who get creative. One makes sex kneel on frozen ground while holding rocks above their heads until they collapse. Another enjoys assigning impossible tasks, digging a hole, and then refilling it over and over just to watch you struggle. These guards don't shout, they smile. They're the most dangerous. You never see their rage coming. It arrives like a weather change, sudden and indifferent. You think about fighting back sometimes. Everyone does. You picture grabbing a tool, swinging wildly, doing something, anything, just to regain a sliver of control. But you don't. No one does. The moment of fantasy passes, replaced by the crushing math of survival. One swing might earn you 5 seconds of rebellion and a lifetime of punishment if you survive it. And if you kill a guard, that's not freedom, that's execution. A quick one if you're lucky, a slow one if they want to make an example. Some guards are worse than others, and you start to learn their patterns. The one who patrols the food line likes to accuse people of theft, whether they're stealing or not. The one on the night shift walks the barracks with a flashlight and stops sometimes, just long enough to make you wonder if he's memorizing your face. You never figure out why. The new recruit seems confused by the misery, unsure of where the cruelty ends and the job begins. He'll learn. They all do. Not all of them shout. Some barely speak. Those are the ones you fear most. Because when a guard doesn't yell, doesn't threaten, doesn't even bother to insult you, it means they see you as nothing. Not a man, not a zek, just something to move and punish and push forward. They don't need to explain themselves to you. You're beneath words. You hear stories about guards who used to be prisoners themselves, given a promotion, a uniform, a rifle, and a reason to turn on their own. Maybe they volunteered. Maybe they didn't. Doesn't matter now. They wear their power like armor. You see it in the way they hold their batons, the way they speak to former friends like strangers. They beat you harder than the rest. No one hates the powerless like the formerly powerless. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of something human behind a guard's eyes. A flicker of regret, a pause, a moment when their hand hesitates. But it never lasts. Whatever conscience they brought with them was stripped away by the same system, the stripping the flesh from your back. The Gulag breaks everyone. The difference is they get to go home at night. You don't. You learn to avoid their attention. Keep your head down. Move quickly, but not too quickly. Answer questions clearly, but without enthusiasm. Don't smile, don't scowl, be invisible, predictable, forgettable. The ideal Zek is one who functions like a shovel. Silent, durable, and easy to replace. And yet, even if you do everything right, even if you vanish into the routine and never cause a moment's trouble, the guards still find ways to remind you that your life belongs to them. That the rules can change without warning. That punishment is always nearby. You are not a man to them. You are not even a prisoner. You are a tool with a heartbeat. And eventually, they expect to break both. Escape is a fantasy that visits everyone eventually. Even the most broken Zeks, the ones who barely speak and can't remember their own birthdays, occasionally look up at the tree line and wonder. Not because they believe they'll make it, but because thinking about it feels better than thinking about what happens if they stay. The forest looks quiet from a distance. Still, white, almost beautiful. But it's not a forest, it's a trap. A vast, frozen, indifferent graveyard, wrapped in pine needles and wolves. The camp doesn't have tall walls or towers with floodlights. It doesn't need them. The geography is the prison. You're surrounded by hundreds of miles of uninhabited wilderness. There are no villages, no roads, no railways, just snow, ice, trees, and death in varying degrees of slowness. The guards know this, so do you. Which is why very few try to run. And when they do, it's never on a good day. It's on the coldest night, when the sky is clear and the wind sounds like it's whispering your name. The kind of night when freezing to death feels like an acceptable alternative to tomorrow's shift. You hear about the runners in pieces, fragments passed between bunkmates when the guards aren't listening. One man took off into the woods barefoot, thinking he'd find a logging road. Another stole a guard's coat and made it as far as the river before falling through the ice. Some make it a few kilometers. Fewer make it 20. The ones who get the farthest usually die the worst. You imagine their bodies, curled beneath snow-laden branches, faces frozen mid-cough, mouths stuffed with bark or mud, or nothing at all. You wonder if it's better to die on your feet, moving towards something, than to rot upright in the work line, waiting for your stomach to finish digesting itself. The guards rarely chase. Why bother? The forest will do their work for them. Sometimes they send dogs just for sport. You've seen the dogs. Muscular, snarling things trained to ignore pain and shred limbs, like old cloth. They're not for protection. They're for punishment. The guards enjoy watching what's left of the runner get dragged back to camp. Half naked, teeth marks along the spine, the color drained from their face, like blood from a corpse. If they're still alive, they're taken to the punishment cell. If not, they're used as a warning. Hung on the fence for a day or two. Long enough to make a statement. Short enough not to bother with burial. You've thought about running. Of course you have. Everyone has. The idea arrives like a whisper during the worst moments. When the hunger hollows out your gut. When the cold eats through your boots. When your hands are shaking too hard to hold the axe, you think. Maybe if I just slip away into the trees. Maybe if I move at night. Maybe if I follow the stars. But then you remember, you haven't seen a map in years. You don't know which direction leads to freedom or which leads deeper into nowhere. You remember that your boots leak, and your coat is thinner than your resolve. You remember that you haven't eaten in 2 days, and your legs tremble just from walking to the latrine. You're not a man. You're a husk. Sometimes, the idea persists. It becomes a plan. You collect bits of information, a direction, a guess, a myth about a village 200 kilometers away. You whisper to a fellow Zek, just to see if anyone else has considered it. Some look at you with hollow pity. Others look at you like you've already died. The boldest ones warn you quietly that even if you succeed, you'll fail. Because if you make it out and they catch you later, the punishment is different. They won't just beat you. They'll break you in ways that don't heal. They'll make an example out of your bones. The most successful escape you ever hear about is a man who lasted a full week in the forest. They found him curled around the remains of a dead rabbit, fingers black with frostbite, eyes wide open and glassy. He didn't make it, but he got farther than most. Some say he was ex-military. Some say he had help. Some say he was just lucky. It doesn't matter now. He's just another story to be told, under blankets at night. Half cautionary tale, half prayer. In the end, you decide against it. Not because you fear death, you made peace with that weeks ago, but because you understand what the cold does to people. It strips away clarity. It replaces reason with fantasy. You've seen men walking barefoot into snowdrifts, convinced they're heading toward warmth. You've seen someone eat pine needles and call it salad. The cold makes fools out of everyone. And if it doesn't kill you, it robs you of everything you were before it finally lets you stop moving. So instead of running, you fantasize. You imagine warm beds and soft bread, and a room with 4 walls that doesn't leak air through every crack. You build an escape inside your head. Quiet, safe, distant. It doesn't get you out, but it keeps you going. And when you lie awake at night, listening to the wind clawing at the walls, you tell yourself you'll run eventually. Maybe next week, maybe next spring, maybe when your feet aren't so numb. And maybe you will, but you probably won't, because you've seen the forest, and you've seen the men who come back from it, and you'd rather not become one of the ones who don't. By now, you've stopped counting the weeks. The trees have gone bare, the ground is frozen stiff, and the cold has become a creature. You thought you understood cold. You didn't. What you felt before was unpleasant, maybe even painful, but survivable, inconvenient, but manageable. That was just the opening act. Now comes winter. Real winter. Soviet winter. The kind that doesn't just numb your fingers, but tries to reach down your throat and kill you from the inside out. The kind that makes the air feel solid, like you're breathing crushed glass. The kind that turns exposed skin black within minutes and doesn't bother giving you a warning first. The sun disappears. Not all at once, but gradually, until you stop seeing it altogether. A few hours of dim light during the day, if you're lucky, sometimes less. Most of the time, it feels like twilight, like the world has given up on full brightness. You lose track of days. You wake up in darkness and go to bed in darkness, and work in a pale gray fog that might as well be night. You begin to forget what color really looks like. Everything is shades of white, gray, or the deep, bruised purple of frostbite. Your breath becomes a weapon against yourself. Each inhale burns your chest. Each exhale crystallizes on your scarf, if you have one, which quickly turns into a stiff, frozen rag glued to your mouth. Your eyelashes freeze together. Your nose runs until it doesn't, because the snot inside it has frozen solid. You cough more often now, partly from the cold, partly from the growing suspicion that your lungs have been replaced with brittle paper. The man in the bunk next to you starts coughing up pink. You don't mention it. You both know what it means. The work never stops. That's what makes winter so special. You're still expected to meet your quota, to dig, chop, lift, and haul, just like before. Only now the tools freeze to your hands, and the ground is so hard it might as well be iron. Your pickaxe bounces off the permafrost like it's hitting stone. If the pickaxe breaks, you dig with whatever's left. Splinters, metal scraps, or just your fingers if you have to. Frostbite becomes common. You see it everywhere. Noses turning black, ears curling in on themselves, fingertips going stiff and waxy. No one talks about it. You just notice people starting to hide their hands more. You notice the way someone favors one foot, dragging it behind them like a dead branch. You hear that if it gets bad enough, the camp doctor, if she's sober, and if the vodka hasn't run out, will amputate with a handsaw. You try not to think about it. You clench your fists and flex your toes constantly, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Pain means something's still working. You eat less now. The rations shrink in winter, as if the state assumes hunger is easier to endure when your metabolism slows from hypothermia. You get thinner. Everyone does. Faces hollow out. Eyes recede. Skin tightens over bones like drumheads. You start seeing people differently. Less as individuals, more as shadows moving from bunk to worksite and back. Some start talking to themselves. Some don't talk at all. A man you shared a joke with last week doesn't wake up one morning. He's not the first. When people die now, they freeze before they stiffen. Bodies are stacked behind the barracks until someone gets around to moving them. The snow covers them quickly. Sometimes you can't tell if a man lying on the ground is asleep, unconscious, or gone. You don't ask. You keep walking. If the guards don't shout, it's probably not your problem. Until roll call. Then they shout. And someone has to drag the corpse to the edge of camp, or pretending it doesn't weigh anything emotionally. Sleep becomes a negotiation. You pile as many bodies as you can onto the same bunk. Not for companionship. No one's in the mood for bonding. But for warmth, human insulation. No one complains about being crowded anymore. You're grateful for the heat, even if it comes from someone who hasn't bathed in months and might cough blood on you in his sleep. You wake up stuck to people, sweat frozen between coats and straw, and just hope you don't lose skin when you peel yourself loose. The guards grow crueler in winter, or maybe just more impatient. They don't like standing outside either. They be quicker, shout louder, shoot faster. There's less tolerance for delay, for mistakes, for visible weakness. The weather is already doing half their job for them. They're just helping it along. You learn not to stumble, not to hesitate, not to slow down, even when you can't feel your feet. If you fall, they might let you get back up, but they might not. You've seen both outcomes. You're not eager to test which one you'll get. You start to fantasize about warmth more than freedom. A stove, a blanket, a real coat. These things become sacred in your mind, symbols of a world that still has softness in it. You think about fire the way people used to think about God. Distant, comforting, impossible to reach. You stop dreaming about escape. You dream about socks. By the time spring arrives, and it will, eventually, you won't be the same. Your body will be lighter, your eyes duller, your thoughts slower. Some of your fingers may be gone. A few people from your barracks will be missing, but you'll still be here. Still swinging the axe, still digging the earth. Because winter wasn't the end. It was just another test. It's hard to pinpoint when the numbness begins. It's not the kind that starts in your fingers from cold, or in your legs from standing too long. This kind goes deeper. It doesn't dull sensation so much as it strips meaning from it. At first you feel everything. Hunger, fear, rage, despair. Then it all starts to blur, like trying to remember a dream just after waking. Your body still hurts. Your stomach still growls. But those signals are background noise now. They don't compel you to act. They're just reminders that you're still technically alive. You stop reacting to things. When a man collapses in the snow, you keep walking. Not because you're cruel, but because it's pointless. If you help him, you'll fall behind. If you fall behind, you'll get less food. And if you get less food, it might be your body they step over tomorrow. When someone is beaten by a guard, you stare straight ahead. When a bunkmate coughs up blood, you turn away. Sympathy is expensive here, and you can't afford it. You no longer speak unless it's necessary. Words are a luxury. Conversations serve no purpose. You don't ask questions. You don't offer comfort. If someone talks to you, you answer in the shortest way possible. The less you say, the safer you are. A slip of the tongue could earn you a trip to the punishment cell, or worse, an informant's report. Till you keep your mouth shut. You begin to enjoy silence. You begin to prefer it. It becomes easier than the risk of connection. Your thoughts simplify. You don't plan weeks ahead. You don't think about next season or next month or even next week. You think about your next ration, your next nap. The next moment your hands can stop moving. Your world shrinks to a few essential concepts. Food, warmth, sleep, pain. That's it. Everything else is ornamental. You used to think about books, about home, about politics or justice or history. Now you think about boiled potatoes, about socks that don't itch, about the last time you felt clean. Humor changes too. You laugh now when someone dies, not from joy but from Something harder to define. Resignation, maybe. Envy. A man doesn't wake up one morning and someone mutters, "Lucky bastard," and a few others chuckle. You do too, because at least he's done. At least he doesn't have to lift another shovel, or swing another axe, or listen to another sermon about fulfilling the glorious purpose of the worker's state. The dead man won't miss anything. He's escaped. You're the one still stuck here. Dreams become cruel. You don't dream of freedom anymore. You dream of food, of warmth, of softness. You dream of soup with flavor and bread that doesn't crumble into dust. Sometimes, your dreams are so vivid. You wake up tasting butter, or feeling sheets beneath your fingers. And then you open your eyes to the stench of the barracks, and the sharp chill in the air, and the wet cough of someone dying 3 bunks away. You don't even sigh. You just sit up, pull on your boots, and get moving. You develop little rituals to get through the days. You count steps. You hum a tune in your head. You tap your fingers in a rhythm while you work. Anything to occupy the brain, so it doesn't start wandering somewhere dangerous. Memory is a minefield. If you start thinking about your past, about people you loved or things you used to enjoy, it will gut you from the inside out. Better to forget. Better to let those parts of yourself dissolve like sugar in water, sweet, then gone. Hope becomes something you learn to hate. It teases you. It tells you that things might improve, that rescue might come, that the system might collapse or your name might be cleared. Hope whispers that one day you'll go home, that you'll explain all this to someone, that your suffering will have made you stronger. But you've seen what hope does. It breaks people. It lifts them up just high enough to fall further. The hopeful are the first to die. They're too slow to adapt, too stubborn to accept the rules, too naive to understand that nothing here is earned, and nothing gets better. Instead, you cultivate acceptance, not peace, just survival. You wake up, you go to work, you eat what you're given, you return, you lie down, you do it again. This is not life, it's maintenance. You are maintaining the shape of a person, the function of a body. You move so the system can continue, so the numbers can stay balanced, so the camp can keep pretending that its purpose is rehabilitation and not obliteration. Occasionally, someone new arrives, fresh-faced, wide-eyed, asking questions. They talk too much. They still expect fairness. You watch them struggle to understand the rules that aren't written, the language that's spoken in glances and silences and beatings. You want to warn them. You don't. You let them learn the hard way. Everyone has to. No one is exempt from the breaking. You were like them once. Now you're not. Now you fit. And fitting is the final stage. You move with the rhythm of the camp. You react with the right amount of blankness. You know when to speak and when not to. You've learned to eat without tasting, to sleep without resting, to breathe without thinking. You've learned to want less, to feel less. You've learned to endure, not because you're strong, but because numbness is easier than pain. Because in the Gulag, it's not survival of the strongest, it's survival of the most empty. Eventually, your sentence ends. Also, you're told. There's no celebration, no handshake, no one shaking the frost from your shoulder and saying, "You did it." Just a quiet announcement from a bored clerk with ink-stained fingers. Your term is complete. You're free to go. That's what they call it, free. But the word tastes strange in your mouth. Like a joke you don't understand anymore. You don't laugh. You just stare at the guard like he's speaking another language. Because after all this time, the idea of going anywhere feels absurd. You don't know how long it's been. Time stopped meaning much after the 3rd winter. The paperwork says 10 years, but it might as well be 50. Your face in the mirror, if you ever find one, isn't the one you arrived with. You've lost teeth, weight, pieces of your personality. Your hands are gnarled. Your back doesn't straighten fully anymore. Your voice is quieter, raspier, like it's been worn down by wind. But somehow, you've made it. You're one of the few. You didn't starve. You weren't shot. You didn't freeze or collapse or give up completely. You are what they call a survivor, though the bar for that term is very, very low. They don't give you much. A slip of paper, maybe a train ticket, third class, if the train isn't already full of livestock or coal. Sometimes, they give you a coat. Usually, they don't. They escort you past the camp gates like they're sending someone off to war, only backward. One moment you're a prisoner, the next, you're a problem for someone else. No one shakes your hand. No one tells you good luck. You walk through the gates, and behind you, the camp swallows someone else. The work continues. It always does. You think maybe you'll go home. Maybe someone will be there. But you don't have papers. Your internal passport was taken when you were arrested. Without it, you can't travel freely. You can't buy train tickets, rent a room, apply for work. You can't even prove you exist. You send a letter, if there's anyone left to send it to. No one answers. Maybe your family was relocated. Maybe they were arrested too. Maybe they just learned to live without you. So you're not really released. You're relocated, assigned to a special settlement. A euphemism, like so many others. It's not quite a camp, but it's not a camp. A grey zone of semi-freedom, where you can't leave the district, can't speak freely, and are required to check in regularly with local authorities. You're under surveillance, still watched, still registered. You are no longer a prisoner by law, but socially and functionally, you may as well be. The guards have traded uniforms for desks. The fences have become invisible, but no less real. The settlement is cold, always. Slightly less frigid than the labor camp, perhaps, but still more tundra than town. You live in a barrack-style hut, shared with other freed men, many of whom look worse than you do. Most are missing something, an eye, a foot, hope. You're all allowed to work, but only in specific roles. Menial jobs, manual labor, the things no one else wants to do. If you're lucky, you haul bricks. If not, you haul bodies. Either way, it's familiar. There are no speeches about rejoining society, no mention of rehabilitation. No one says sorry. You are not thanked for your service to the state. You are not recognized as a victim of wrongful imprisonment. Because officially, you weren't. The system doesn't make mistakes, so you must have done something. Even if no one remembers what. Even if the paperwork was lost. Even if the accusation was made up by a neighbor who wanted your boots. You carry the stain of guilt forever. It doesn't wash off, no matter how many winters you survive. You try to adapt. You sweep floors. You dig ditches. You queue for bread again, just like before. You learn which officials to avoid, which buildings are warmest, which shops are least likely to turn you away. You learn how to say, "Yes, comrade," with exactly the right tone. You smile when necessary. You keep your head down, even when there's nothing above you. After a while, it becomes habit again. And then one day, someone says something truly dangerous. They say, "At least you're free now." You don't respond. Not because you disagree, but because you don't want to agree either. You know what freedom felt like before. It had weight, texture. It came with choices. Now it feels like a shadow of that thing, stretched thin and pale across the snow. You can leave the hut, but not the district. You can speak, but only carefully. You can work, but only under supervision. You can live, but not loudly, not fully. You find yourself thinking about the camp. Not fondly, not nostalgically, but with a kind of grim clarity. At least there, the rules were known. The lines were clear. You knew who the enemy was. You knew what would get you punished. Out here, everything is vague. The world is quieter, but the silence is suspicious. You can't tell if you've escaped, or just changed cells. So you keep walking. You keep waking up. You keep eating what you're given. Not because you believe in anything. Not because you hope for change. But because that's what you've learned to do. The body moves, the mind stays low. The past stays buried, except in dreams. Sometimes you wonder if this counts as survival. Other times, you just count the days. It's all you've ever done. Welcome to freedom. History moves on. Not because it makes peace with itself, but because people stop looking directly at it. Stalin dies just like that. A man responsible for millions of broken lives collapses onto a rug, clutching his chest. There are no dramatic final words, no reckoning. Just the quiet pause that follows the death of power, and the mad scramble to decide what happens next. The government begins revising its own story. Some officials are purged. Some prisons are reformed. A few surviving inmates are released quietly, as if their suffering had simply expired like old paperwork. Some camps close. Others are renamed, reclassified, absorbed into different ministries. The buildings are reused. The barracks become warehouses. The fences rust. The watchtowers fall into disrepair, and the signs are taken down. The official records are rewritten or destroyed. Entire settlements vanish from maps. Men who spent decades stacking bricks in -40 degrees are now footnotes, if they're mentioned at all. The state decides that remembering too much would be bad for morale. Better to forget. Better to move forward. Your file might be updated. Maybe someone stamps it rehabilitated, decades after your sentence ended. Maybe a relative files a petition and receives a letter saying your conviction was unjust and your name has been cleared. Maybe someone reads your case aloud in a courtroom, long after you're gone, and nods solemnly before moving on to the next one. But by then, your teeth are long buried in Siberian permafrost. Your file might be clean, but your body still remembers the work. Your back never unbends. Your fingers never forget how cold felt. The ground remembers too. Permafrost doesn't decay the dead. It preserves them. Bones and boots and buttons lie in frozen soil, perfectly still and perfectly silent. There are mass graves all across the north, unmarked and unspoken. If you walk the wrong direction in certain forests, your feet might pass over thousands of lives. Some of those bones belong to people who never got trials. Some to those who did and weren't sure which was worse. Some to men who tried to escape. Some to men who just wanted to be heard. All of them are quiet now. No monuments mark most of the camps. Some places put up plaques. Some names get chiseled into stone. But there's no real reckoning. No apology that matches the scale of what happened. The Gulag becomes a topic for historians, not governments. A dark chapter, to be acknowledged briefly, before moving on to lighter fare. Some survivors give interviews in old age. Their voice is brittle but steady. Most don't. Most learned long ago that silence keeps you alive longer than memory. Even now, the system's ghosts linger. In old men who still flinch at the sound of boots. In children who are raised by parents too traumatized to tell bedtime stories. In villages where entire generations went missing 1 year, and no one said a word. In archives filled with the redacted names and missing documents. In a culture that still hasn't decided how much truth it can tolerate. You carry the legacy too, even if you didn't live through it. If you're listening, it's yours now. In a way, that's what history does. It shifts the burden forward into the hands of strangers who weren't there but are now responsible for knowing, for refusing to forget. Because the worst parts of this story weren't the cold, or the starvation, or the violence. The worst part was that, for decades, almost no one talked about it. For a long time, the Gulag was a whisper, then a rumor, then a bad memory locked away behind layers of bureaucratic dust. You might pass the ruins of a camp someday and not know what it was. You might meet someone whose grandfather went north and never came back. You might see a name in a declassified file and wonder what it meant to swing an axe for 10 years on a bowl of cabbage water in fear. Most people won't. Most people will never look closely enough to feel what you're feeling now, but some will. And that's what matters. That someone still looks, that someone still says it out loud, that someone still tells the story, not because it's pleasant or heroic or cinematic, but because it's true, because silence is what let it happen, because indifference is what let it continue, Because forgetting is just another kind of erasure, and there's been enough of that already. So tonight, while you lie still hearing the last echoes of footsteps crunching through frozen ground, remember that not everyone got out. Not everyone survived their sentence. Not everyone made it to release. Not everyone had their name cleared. But you heard their story. You felt the cold, the hunger, the despair, even if just for a while. And that matters more than you might think. Because in the Gulag, most prisoners didn't get a legacy. But now, at least, they get a witness. And that's a start. That brings us to the end of tonight's quiet march through a system that didn't need fire or blood to destroy lives. Just paper, cold, and time. If you're still awake, thank you for walking beside me through the frostbitten silence that swallowed millions and left behind only bones and bureaucracy. If you'd like early access to more softly spoken horrors history tried to forget, along with perks like ad-free audio of these episodes, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a comment about where you think you'd have broken first. The cold, the hunger, or the waiting. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, leaving a rating or review is the best way to help others find these videos. Sleep well. you